this afternoon. We have our special guest, the mothers. But before we start with this program, I'm going to ask you all to stand for a word of prayer. God in heaven, we want to thank you, Lord, for just being in our presence from the beginning. We open our eyes. You're always with us. But Lord, we thank you for moving in this program, in this church, for the warmth and the fellowship and the family that we are. I pray, God, that the rest of this day, the rest of this program will go according to your will. We want to thank you for our special guest, for our speaker. We want to thank you for all that are participating. We want to thank you for your Holy Spirit being with us. I pray that we will lift our hearts to you now as we sing. In Jesus' name, amen. Brother Don.
Happy Sabbath, everyone. I'm going to tell you that Jeremy made a big mistake. He asked me to do a song service, and I haven't done song service since I was a little boy. So I'm going to sing those old songs, okay? So we're going to start with one. It's called I would make you fishers of men. Who remember that? Who knows that one? Okay. You don't know that one? Here it goes. Here it goes. I will make you fishers of men.
So, a pseudo tradition continues. We're going to have a quiz right now, and it will be focused on mothers. So the quiz is called Mothers in History. in the Bible, mothers in the Bible, in history, and at Northboro. So you have to know some Northboro history as well to do well at this quiz. Sister Linda, I think you'll have an advantage maybe. So at this time, I'm going to invite Grant. Grant has been chosen to read off the questions. And the way it works, do you want to explain it, Grant? How Mentimeter works? Scanning it? All right, so scan the QR code so you can play along on your phones. Okay? After every question, we're going to see who got the right answers. So scan the QR code. I don't know if you need to put in a number after that, but I think just scanning it is good. All right, just scan the code. If you haven't gotten it yet, if it's not working for you, wave your hand. It's not working? Okay.
Is everyone ready? Anyone waiting for it? As long as you see the mom screen that you do on the board, you're all good. It'll start in a moment. Anyone else need any help? All right, anyone else need any help? Okay, I think we're good. You want to get it started? Alrighty, question 1 of 3. Question 1. Which mother lost her husband and 2 sons in a foreign land but returned to Bethlehem with her loyal daughter-in-law? Sarah, Naomi, Leah, or Hannah? Five seconds. 3, 2, 1. Correct, Naomi. Alrighty. Okay, question 2. Which of Eve's 3 sons was an ancestor of Noah and called the father of all mankind that survived the great flood? Abel, Cain, Adam, or Seth? Got 13 seconds left. Waiting for 3 more people? There we go. Correct, Seth. A couple people got lost there, a little bit. Okay, question 13, 3, not 13. Which of the elderly women gave birth to John the Baptist after being told by an angel she would conceive? Mary, Elizabeth, Martha, or Salome? Yeah. Elizabeth is correct. All right, question 4. This intelligent one prevented David from taking revenge and later became his wife after her foolish husband, Nabal, died. Abigail, Bathsheba, Ruth, or Michael? Sheba. Okay, 5 seconds left. Everyone got it? Abigail, correct. All right, these are just historical mothers now. Coming up next. Wait, who's Dragonite? Who's in first place? Who's Dragonite? That's you? Okay. Miss Nina's in first place. Who's Simba? You know who Simba is? Okay, we have the family team over here. Casper. Anyone Casper? Oh, that's all you. Okay. Croc? Is anyone Croc? No one? All right, well, let's move on. Okay, these next batch of questions are just historical mothers, non-biblical, just historical. As the matriarch of a famous gospel family from Detroit, this mother raised 10 children, most of whom became successful singers and musicians. Mahalia Jackson, Shirley Caesar, Dolores Winans, or Cece Winans? Everyone voted? Ooh, split. Dolores Winans is the correct answer, though. Nice. Winans. Next question. How many children did Adventist pioneer and prolific writer Ellen G. White have? 3 girls, 1 boy, 4 boys, 2 girls, or 1 boy? 10 seconds left. Four boys is the correct answer. Nice. 13 of y'all got that. Okay, question 7. This Nobel Prize winning mother discovered radium and polonium while raising two daughters, one of whom also won a Nobel Prize. Rosalind Franklin, Jane Goodall, Mary Curie, Irene Joliot Curie. Okay, 5 seconds left. The correct answer is Marie Curie. Nice. 15 of y'all got that. Okay, question 8. Which mother of a world-famous athlete is a Seventh-day Adventist? Gloria James, LeBron's mom, Oris Priest, Venus and Serena's mom, Ava Rake Wilson's, or Jennifer Bolt? 5 seconds left. Correct. Nice job. It's the Jamaican. All right, we have the standings changed at all? Oh, Miss Nina's still taking it. Who's Beyonce? And okay, we got Beyonce in the back. What? All righty. Question 9. These are Northboro church mothers. So people in the community, you have to know the people around you. Maybe ask a couple questions if you see the answers. Who made history as the first female head elder at Northboro Church? Ten seconds left. Circle the answer is Esther Small. Most people got that. Okay, question 10. Which former Northboro First Lady from Guyana raised her children together with her husband in the U.S. Virgin Islands before coming to Massachusetts? Lovita Norman, Laverne Marks, Gloria Roberts, or Bernadette Henry? Okay, 5 seconds left. All right, 9 of y'all got that. Good job. Question 11. Which of these two mothers at Northbrook Church currently licensed practicing dentists? 15 seconds left. There we go. Nice job. 16. Hey, second to last question. In the past, this doctor led the AY department at Northboro SDA Church for a few years. Dr. Rachel Carson, Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell, Dr. Raquel Daisley Kidd, or Ivory Roberts Clark. 5 seconds left. Correct. 6 of y'all fell for the other one. All right, last question. Which current Northboro member is a proficient American Sign Language interpreter? Monica Wilds, Carol, I can't say her last name, Charlotte Toms, or Jessica Smith? I think everyone in this congregation should be able to get this one. It's probably one of the easiest. There's 2. There we go, nice. All right, let's see the leaderboards. Oh. Okay, number 1 is, without a doubt, Miss Nina. Stand up. Give a round of applause. Number 2 was Montana, and number 3 was Kelsey. Who was Montana? Who was Montana? The football icon? Anyone had that? No? That's you. Second place right here. Nice. Congratulations. Alrighty. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Congratulations to the winners. You're all winners, as they say, right? Okay, we're going to cue up the main event right now. Elder first, historian, history-making first elder. Could you give an introduction to our speaker, please?
This afternoon, we have someone with us to present on this very timely subject, who hails from Nepal. He has done some studies and some work in Oklahoma. He has done some work here in Worcester, Massachusetts. And now he covers a wide range of leadership and oversight in the Department of Mental Health in the state of Massachusetts. I had the privilege of working with him as a psychiatrist when he worked locally at Worcester Recovery Center and Hospital. He is a patient's doctor. We are grateful that he has taken some time out from his busy schedule to spend some time with us this afternoon. So at this time, I am pleased to introduce Dr. Imam Saleh.
So I have the privilege of feeling some questions to the good doctor. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I think so. Can you hear me? I think I'm loud enough. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Happy to have Dr. Saleh with us this afternoon. I think this morning as we focused on mothers and women, we got the grace, we got the strength, and this afternoon we're focusing on mental health. So I'm gonna ask Dr. Saleh to give us a little background. Esther, give us some background, but tell us a little bit about yourself and about how you got into this profession.
Well, thank you. It's so good to be here in this house of God. What I can say is it's such a distinct honor and a privilege to be here amongst people of faith and to enjoy the evening. Before I begin, I want to, pay some tribute to Esther, who I have known since I was an attending on the floor. I think it's 11 years after I'd returned from Oklahoma. And I can tell you that I have not met a better human being, a better nurse, a better leader, a better family member. Esther, you're the real one, really. I can probably talk about you all evening, and that would suffice, but I would stop there. Just a little bit about myself. I was born in Nepal, grew up in a small, mountain town. I'm one of 7, so I do like some attention. Our mom had to, make breakfast for us in the morning. 7 of us, imagine that, with firewood. And I want to begin by talking about her a little bit, because one thing I remember vividly about her is that I did not realize I was allergic to bread until late into my 30s, So in Nepal, you eat bread is a very common thing. And if you don't eat it, you're forced to eat it, right? And somehow she knew that it didn't work for me. So she would specially make rice for me. And I was a picky eater, so I had allergies, and my mom somehow she knew. And so she would make, out of these 7 kids, I would get the special treats. Because she knew that some things didn't work for me. So she was kind of like a doctor or a nurse. She knew it. And I didn't realize that. The second piece I want to talk about my mother is, I was a fellow here in 2009 at University of Massachusetts Medical School, doing my fellowship in forensic psychiatry. And so in 2010, in March, my mother passed away. And my supervisor back then, Dr. Noroyan, you know him, he let me have 1 month, take the full month off to go to Nepal and do what needed to be done to and I told him, Paul, no matter where I go, I will come back and work for you. So that's how much I care about our mothers, which is, I'm going to come back and work for you no matter where I go. So I took some detours, went to Oklahoma, went to New York, came back here, and have been here since. So that's my story. My formal title right now is I'm a state medical director for the Department of Mental Health and the Deputy Commissioner for Clinical and Professional Services. I generally work with people with serious mental illnesses. But today, on this occasion, first of all, I want to say Happy Mother's Day. Mothers are precious. I can't, that's the other topic. I can talk about mothers for every day. There is not a day when I don't think about my mother. There is not a day. Not a day. I get up in the morning, and within the first couple of hours, I either picture her or think of her. It's the patience, that I learned from her, and the sacrifice. Like, who takes care of 7 kids and not complain? 7 difficult, challenging, not easy. Well, some of them were easy. I was not the easy one. So, that's my background. That's who I am. I have, somehow I got into working with people with mental illnesses. I lost a friend to suicide. And that's very important. That drove me into doing, the work in mental health. The very close, dear friend of mine who I saw him like just 2 days before. And I didn't realize he was suffering, And you can see how you can miss things.
Sure.
Exactly. Sure. And you can miss things when you know someone well. You can miss things when you know in families, You can miss it with partners, with kids, with mothers, with fathers, in the families. And what it taught me was to talk about it, to make sure that we talk about it.
So, Doctor, you're using the word mental health, and since the pandemic, we've seen a rise in mental health issues on the campus where I work. But tell us a little bit about how you define mental health.
Thank you. Yes. So maybe I should begin by saying, so you can find the definition. If you Google, you can find the definition, right? Maybe I should begin by saying, what is not mental illness, right? That would help. So mental illness is not some, personal defect. So historically, a lot of communities have thought of mental illness as a defect. It happens in law enforcement a lot. It happens in the military. It happens in physician community, that you think you're weak. It's not a weakness. It's just an illness. So I want to make sure that we don't think about mental illness as a weakness. It's not a weakness. It's just something that you're afflicted. So that's one. The second thing is it's not a curse from God. It's not. The third thing is it doesn't reflect upon you or your family. It doesn't make you lesser. You remain as dignified as anyone else just because you have a mental illness. The dignity as a human being, as a person, as a mother, as a father, it doesn't go away. You're exactly the same person that you are. And so it's not any of those things. But what it is, so you're looking at mood, that's one thing. You're looking at your thinking, and you're looking at your behavior. So almost anything that affects or disrupts any of these things and impacts a major functioning in your life. So your relationships, your work, let's say things you'll enjoy. So if any of these things, either your mood, your thinking, or your behavior. It's disrupted to the extent that it's impacting something you like to do or something you're doing routinely.
Okay.
So that, in a nutshell, is a mental
Okay. So since it's Mother's Day, and today we're celebrating mothers, of course, and this afternoon we heard about mothers who have a lot of different children, and there is this statistics out there that are saying that women and mothers don't have mental health issues. And so I want to throw that at you. This is the question that actually came in. What about women and mental health? Is it something that affects them more than it does the regular population?
So mental illness affects anyone and can affect, all of us. So the fact that if anyone thinks that it doesn't affect, people who, of this class or that class, mental illness is very non-discriminating. It affects all of us. For women, it's a particular stress. In any illness that you look at, any mental health category, women are 2 to 3 times more likely to get it. So, for example, depression. Men, if you compare men versus women are more likely to get depressed, right? So the only illness, where women and men, have a similar percentage of prevalence, or, they're affected similarly, is schizophrenia. That's the only one. Outside of that, every other mental illness, women are more likely to be affected by it. Women are more likely to be suffering from it. So the prevalence on the incidence rate is higher, 2 to 3 times. And for different diagnoses, different illnesses, it varies. But generically, I can safely say that it's 2 to 3 times higher in women.
And can you give us some maybe additional facts as to why that is? That women are disproportionately suffering from mental illness.
So the paradigm, at least I like to think from, is the biopsychosocial model. It's a very validated, and different people have different models. So there is the biology, there is the psychology, and there is the social element. So you're looking at from 3 different directions. So we have some biological predispositions. In families, some things run in families. Then there is a psychological predisposition. So I have a personality. All of us have a different temperament, different personality. Then there is a social element. And so what I would say is historically, if you look at it, women have been disadvantaged in societies and families. And I can talk about, where I grew up in Nepal, traditional role for a woman was you stay home. What do? You stay home, you cook, and that attitude still prevails. Nothing wrong with that, right? But if you're assumed to or forced to do that, there is something wrong with it, right? A lot of women enjoy doing it. They want to stay home. Like my mom, we could not take her out. She loved being home. For her, home was everything, And so, but in general, if you're forced into a role, that social role historically over millennia, women have been disadvantaged. There are all kinds of disadvantages. So that puts you at some risk of a mental illness because you're socially isolated. You're sometimes financially dependent. Your role in the community or in the broader society. Psychologically, in general, women tend to do a little better. And I'm making some assumptions.
Yes.
Women tend to have friends, girlfriends, a lot of friendships, better than men. So that's a strength. Biologically, there is a level of predispositions you see. So depression, for biological reasons, tends to run in women. And we can go into the biology of it, and I don't want to get, too complicated, but biologically for depression, women are much more predisposed. For PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, highly likely to get predisposed to post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a major mental illness. And so those are, some of the three factors that contribute to historical disadvantages, that women have and continue to have, in some communities more so than others, in some, states more so than others. And there is a higher biological predisposition, except for schizophrenia. That's the only illness, no matter where you go in the world, it's 1 out of 100. That's the number. So 1 out of 100, no matter what your race is, no matter what your background is, no matter what your religion is, 1 out of 100 is going to have schizophrenia. It's validated. Outside of that, everything else, women tend to have, get more of.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about children this weekend and mothers. We've heard about postpartum depression in women. And women, we talk about married women, we talk about single women. Tell us a little bit about what that is and why, who suffers from it, because not every woman suffers from postpartum depression. But tell us what it is and what we can do about it.
I think that's a great question, I say. So I can tell you if you have a history of depression. So before you had a child, if you have a history of depression, your risk goes up. So that's a major risk. So that if you want to take one thing out of this talk is if you had a prior history of depression where you needed to be treated, either with a medication or you needed to be in a hospital, then it predisposes you to postpartum depression. Also to postpartum psychosis. Those are two different things. So that's a very high risk. Younger women, they tend to, suffer more, so in their 20s and 30s. And then there is a age distribution also around menopause. So, postmenopausal women, they tend to suffer with depression. But, going back to postpartum depression, depression has two modes, right? But for, women of childbearing age, if you have a prior history of depression where you needed to be treated, you're more likely to be predisposed. Now, what it does is right after you give birth, you're likely to get all the symptoms of depression, which are depressed mood. It doesn't have to be depressed mood too. It can be sometimes irritable mood, right? So you're just irritated. So when we think of depression, we're thinking of someone looking sad, right? It doesn't have to be sad. Someone can look angry or irritated. That's one sign. And typically in the first 2 weeks, you're going to see it. You're going to see low energy. One thing, the mnemonics we use is SIGI caps. We always use it. So S is suicidality, I is interest, G is guilt. You feel guilty. You feel guilty as though you have, and different women get different kinds of symptoms. Sometimes you feel guilty as though you have given birth to someone defective. That happened because your cognition is getting affected, right? That you're to be blamed, that this child is going to be doomed, right? And so that guilt takes in. Or you didn't plan it and it's a burden for you, right? If it was a planned pregnancy, then you're thinking of how am I going to raise the child? There's a lot of guilt in there. So SIG E caps. E is the energy. Your energy is very low. Your concentration, that's the C. Your concentration is very low. Your attention is very low. Then the classic symptom of postpartum depression is psychomotor retardation. And we don't use that word, but clinical terms we use it, right? So psychomotor slowness. So this gesturing that I am doing, so let's say at baseline I do this gesturing. That's who I am. If I stop doing this, then you can say it's a Dr. Saleh is having psychomotor slowing, right? So you're going to see that there is a generic psychomotor slowing. So your body doesn't move as well as it used to. You're bed bound. You don't have any energy. You're not taking any interest. You're feeling so depressed that to the extent that you don't want to live or you don't want your child to live. these things could happen, right? Now, any God would not want that, right? That's why I said at the very beginning, it has nothing to do with a curse, with anything. It's just an illness. You're suffering from a biological illness. Your hormones, your neurotransmitters, et cetera, they're being dysregulated in your brain, and your body is reacting to it. So
That's interesting. We take these things for granted, but it's so involved. A woman gets a child. But my question is, from the time the woman gives birth to the time that she begins experiencing some of these symptoms, how long you think that is?
So, very quick. So you're going to notice as in the first week or so. First couple of weeks, you're going to see it. Some days you can see it on day one. Yeah. But the families are not going to notice it. The partner, the spouses, or the family members or the kids, if there are older kids, they're going to notice things like, well, mom is not doing what, she usually does, right? So there are going to be subtle signs. But the most prominent sign is someone is getting slowed, right? So if you notice that, and typically we're going to say, well, it's normal, right? You've just given birth, you're exhausted. It's time to rest, but you can see the distinctions, right? You can rest, but this thing I'm doing, I don't have to rest for this. It doesn't take too much energy, right? This gesturing, it's part of my psychomotor thing. And if I'm not doing that, this is who I am, that's a subtle sign. If I enjoy doing something, let's say if I like listening to music, I enjoy going to church, if I stop doing some of those things, you're going to notice I'm very quickly, and initially, any dysphoric mood, hopelessness, that's a good sign, right? So if you're thinking that I am doomed, because and it can manifest in any way. Helplessness, no one's helping me, no one's looking after me, no one is taking care of me. So anytime you see helplessness, hopelessness, psychomotor slowing, and you can see that in the first week very quickly. And if I may add, it can get so bad that some people, for some mothers, the first line of treatment is what we call electroconvulsive therapy. And there is a reason for that. I can explain it. So if someone is so severely depressed as a young mother, as a new mother, the very first line of treatment is ECT, which a lot of people are terrified of, right? If you think about it, there is a lot of stigma around it. Yeah.
Well, Doctor, we are people of faith. And we believe in God, and we believe that God could cure anything, and that we pray, and that if someone says that I have a mental illness, the belief is that God's people don't suffer from mental illnesses. There got to be something wrong, because we're not supposed to suffer from mental illnesses. So I know that that's a narrative in many churches, that God, if you serve God and you say you have a mental illness, then something is definitely wrong with you, because if you pray, God can make the difference. Where do we go with thinking like that?
So it's a great question, right? If I speak to my dad, who's 94-year-old, he would also say something very similar, right? But I have seen an evolution in his thinking with time as well, right? And so we have to validate that. People of faith, faith is a very important component. So the very first thing I can't do as a mental health professional, someone works with, in the field, is I can say, well, the prayers are important. You can pray. How about we also try medications while you're praying, right? How about we also go talk to a therapist while you're praying?
Yes.
How about we pray together?
Yes.
Maybe I'm not a believer, but I'm just going to join you there, right? A lot of, so one of the things we notice in psychiatry, there are a lot of people who are not a believer, or and so what do you do is, well, while you pray and I sit here. I was telling Esther in Oklahoma, half the time I read the Bible with my patients. That's what they wanted to do in the treatment team meeting. Different, so the treatment team meetings were, I want to say this, so I was supervising a all-female unit, young mothers. A lot of them were young mothers, and they wanted to pray. You know, a lot of them were separated from their kids, and a lot of them were separated from their children because they had some legal charges. And they wanted to pray, and I, as a doctor, the only way I can join with that person, that mother, is, well, let's do it together. How about you pray and I watch you? And here's the medication I want to add to it. Biopsychosocial model, right? That's the framework we try to use. There is the biology, some things you need medications for. Some things are psychological, and some things are, social elements of it. So if you're a believer, if you believe in God, now the one thing we have to do refute, or at least, try to educate people is, plenty of people of faith get, a mental health affliction, like they get a physical illness. Being a faithful person doesn't prevent us from not having diabetes, right? We get diabetes, we get hypertension, high blood pressure, we get all kinds of illnesses. Mental illnesses are no exception. So the one way I approach is validate it, that there is, power in prayer, there are studies around it, and we have what we call placebo effect in science, So if people believe, if they like their doctor, they're more likely to take medication, they're more likely to get better. If they like their nurse, they're more likely to do what the nurse asks them to do, and they're more likely to get better. So there is a placebo effect in science. Some of us call that faith. Yeah.
Here in our church, we see in the bulletin and on the screen sometimes, there's this 888 number that we can call. And I guess there are many people who probably need the help, but probably wouldn't because they don't know the level of confidentiality. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So confidentiality, I'm going to talk about it a little different. So you want to remember the first two letters, C and O, confidentiality. So C is clinician and O is obligation. So if a patient comes to me, and I'll come back to the hotline in a minute. So if a patient comes to me and they tell me something, I am taking that to my grave. That's the highest level of obligation. Now there are exceptions, right? So the exceptions are, if someone tells me they want to kill themselves right now, then ethically I'm allowed to break that. And I educate that to a patient. If someone tells me that they're going to go hurt someone, then I'm allowed to break that. So there are exceptions to it. Otherwise, we're supposed to maintain confidentiality. Similar concept with the 988 helpline, right? So if let's say if I call seeking help, it's supposed to be confidential. But if I call saying I'm going to kill myself, then they're going to call, whoever, right? To make sure that you get the help. Even then, we're supposed to maintain as much confidentiality as possible. So we use a term need to know, right? So let's say Esther, myself, and Kathy, and Juanita, we work in the same hospital. If we're on different unit taking care of different people, we don't have to tell everyone everything. So need to know. So the disclosure is only what needs to be disclosed to take care of this person who's acutely distressed. And if it's safety issues, that's when we're allowed to break confidentiality. The rest of it, it's all confidential. Yeah.
Well, I have one more question, and then I'm going to throw it out to the group. But you talked a little bit about medication as it pertains to mental illness. What can we as a church do if we know that there are members or a member suffering from a mental illness? What can the church do?
So this church is very fortunate. You have someone like Esther. So in terms of church, educating the membership that mental illnesses are just like any other illnesses. That's very important. That, they're like diabetes, they're like high blood pressure, they're like anything. We get cancer. Sometimes some mental illnesses are serious. So the very first thing we have to do is education. The second thing is, I am not to be blamed for it. If I get a mental illness, I get a mental illness. It's not my fault. I am no less. That's very important. The third thing is providing resources. So if you go to mass.gov, so I pulled this up, I'm going to, all you need to do is just Google 988 helpline. And all the resources I found was the very first one, Mass Health Behavioral Helpline. Anyone has heard of it? All right, for younger people, people who like to text, you can text. You can text in 200 languages. It's a resource. It's a Commonwealth resource. We have it. All you have to do is 1-833-773-2445. So if they don't want to talk to you or they don't want to talk to Esther, because it may be embarrassing. Sometimes I don't want to talk about my stuff with my sister. I would rather talk with my friend, right? So, the membership, may not be comfortable talking to Esther, but there is this confidential helpline. It's a Commonwealth resource, 24/7, chat, text, call, in 200 plus languages, all kinds of languages. Right? That's a great resource.
Yes.
We're very blessed. Then there is the 988 suicide and crisis lifeline.
Right.
Now I want to stress it. I began by saying that how I lost a friend to suicide happens to all of us. That there are going to be times in our lives when we can feel helpless, when we can feel hopeless. Even people of faith can feel helpless and hopeless. I can give you examples after examples that I've worked with people with deep faith feeling helpless and hopeless. And you can get to a point where you don't want to live it. Life is so worth living. There is a helpline for that. 988. And there are all kinds of helplines. There is SafeLink for domestic violence. It's our common resource. And so the church, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it openly. If we have a family member who's suffering from it, we don't have to give every detail. Like I said at the beginning, that I'm in the profession because I lost a friend to suicide. That motivated me, and I talk about it. It's a deep passion or commitment that drove me to do the work, and I continue to do it. So there is not a person. I would be surprised if in this room all of us don't have someone. We know someone who has a mental illness or is seeking treatment. 40% of the people are taking a medication for depression. So in this room, 40 out of 100 people are probably on medication, right? If you just go by stat. There is no shame in talking about it. We have to talk about it. The very first thing we do is talk, educate, and make sure that it doesn't make us less. There is no shame.
Yes. I think we get rid of the stigma by keep talking about it.
Absolutely.
And by sometimes recognizing people among us with a mental illness. Now, I suffer from depression for a long time. A lot of people in this church may not know that. And I struggled through it because I didn't know how to deal with it. I just know that I wasn't feeling myself, So, and I've known of other friends of mine right here in this church who've talked about depression. And it's a serious thing, You could be functionally depressed. I mean, I'm a dean at a university, and I do my job well, and everybody believes that I'm great at what I do, but, I know me, and I know how I feel about certain things. And so, but here is where the faith comes in. I believe my knowledge of God helps, along with medication.
Of course.
Yes. So I'm going to throw it out to the group. I'm sure you have some questions for Dr. Asele. And who wants to be first? Yes, Pauline.
I would like to have you speak about grief. When my dad died 20 years ago, It took me about a year to get over it, and I was fine. About a year ago, my mom died, and it was a totally different story for me. I thought I was doing well, but after a year, it got very, very difficult. So can you deal with that issue? Do you deal with people that are going through grief and in the loss of a loved one, and you just can't seem to move on?
So, first of all, please, can you say what your name is, please? Pauline. Hi, Pauline. I'm so very sorry to hear of your loss. And that's one of the things I actually like to, work with people who've had losses. And in our building at Worcester, we had one suicide, and I remember doing a big group with almost 50 people in that room. And in our society, in this modern society, we don't have time to sit together or talk about it. So in the conventional or traditional societies, there is a 40 days of mourning, or a 30-day or 20-day where families sit together. At least, here we don't get to do that. One thing that helps is, so I think I mentioned, I lost my mother, and I think of her every day. Not a day goes by where I don't think of her. It wouldn't, I would not get to noon, 12 o'clock, unless I've thought of my mother in one fashion or the other. And I'm a busy person, but I carry her in my heart and in my mind. So just because we're carrying our loved ones with us, that doesn't mean we're stuck, right? So, so what you're doing, what I am doing is it's called identification. So it's a process, it's a psychological term. And one of my teacher's mentors, he was an Austrian professor of psychoanalysis, he said, you just carry good qualities about whoever you have lost. So for me, it was my mom's, how she sacrifices herself, that she's so giving. And in some ways, I carry some of that. Not a lot, but I carry some of that. Forgiveness was a big thing for her, no matter what I did. So people are incredibly mean sometimes to me. And I always say, well, I have to take the high road. That's my mother speaking in me. I am carrying her. People are so mean. Sometimes you can't believe in the work. Sometimes, And by and large, I don't think there is a day where I say, well, let's take a high road. That's me, carrying my mother with me and grieving that loss. That was almost 15 years ago, and I'm still carrying her. So that's grieving, right? Grieving, and while also I carry my mom with me. But there is a psychological, there is a proper therapeutic work that's doable, right? So for almost in the first year, it's normal to grieve. So if you're thinking of, your loved one you've lost, it's normal to do that. That it's nothing abnormal. Now, if you are bedbound, you're not getting out, if you're not at church, let's say for the next 6 months, I will be like, okay, maybe, there is, but if you are doing some of the things at a slower pace, but you still have the energy, you still have the concentration, you're still enjoying some of the things that you wanted to do, but you're thinking of your loved ones, it's grieving and it's normal grieving. And sometimes it can be prolonged. Nothing wrong with that. As long as it's not affecting your major life domains. So the other thing to do is, so when I am working with someone who's grieving a loss, by the way, I'm enriched by that. When someone shares, what gems they have lost. It's such a personal, it's hard to share your deeper pains. And when people do that to me, I'm like, okay, this person can trust me enough that they're sharing. And one of the things I always ask them, is, what do you miss the most about her? And so that would be a question. What do you miss the most? And that carries us forward. That whatever I miss the most, and I think I mentioned about my mother, So grief, sometimes you need medication, sometimes you need to talk, sometimes you need to just go do normal, what we call life, stuff. Also, if you have successive losses, it also brings us our own sense of vulnerabilities, that I am also vulnerable, It happened to me, when I lost my mother, I felt like an orphan. I wasn't, And here I am, and I worry about my father, right? He's a 94-year-old. He's very healthy, he's very intact. So it's a sense of how vulnerable we are as human beings. And that's also okay to feel that way. But the grieving itself is, just because you're grieving doesn't mean there is anything wrong with it. I'm still grieving my mother. Still. I hope that helps. Yeah.
Not sure what I'm supposed to do now. I'm retired, but it's like, what do I do with all of this that I'm going through that I can use to help someone else? I'm just kind of, I show up and that's kind of what I was talking about moving on with what I'm supposed to do with my life. How do you, it's a puzzle to me. What am I supposed to do now? Because she was such a big part of my life, and she's not there anymore. And my husband and I took care of her for 3 years. And so it's like I lost my job. I don't know which direction to go into.
So let me ask you this, and you don't have to answer, but I'm going to ask you. I'm a psychiatrist, so I have to. So you're already doing what needs to be done. You're part of a grief group. Let me ask you, how often is that? Is it a weekly thing or a monthly thing? Once a week. Is it in person? So that's wonderful. So you're already contributing to it by being part of this peer support group. And so that's one thing you're already doing. Then we have to think about the biopsychosocial framework, right? So we have to address the biology of it. So let's say if I'm starting to feel depressed, I have to go talk to a professional. It could happen. Grief can turn into depression. Depression can turn into severe depression. So that part we have to address. And that you will know when you are not doing regular stuff. You're not sleeping well, you're either getting sad or you're getting irritable, right? Your energy is low. You're not getting up, you're not dressing up, you're not cooking, you're not, all those things. That's the biology of it. The psychology of it is self-care, right? So this week I was feeling a little bit sick, and I worked from home. But you know what I did? I got up in the morning, I did exactly what I do when I go to work. I took shower, I dressed up in my tie, even though I was home, because it's a ritual for me. It helped me. And so you want to do some of the things you've always done, the psychological aspect of it. And the social part you do in the grief group, it would continue to, I think that may be probably the most important thing you're doing, the attending the grief group. And if there is a facilitator who has some professional background, that would be helpful. So you may want to look for someone who facilitates grief group. Yeah.
Fortunately, I lost my mother 2 years ago as well. And Paulie and I still go through the grief process. But there's one thing that helps me. Before she died, she said, I want you to work with your sister. And I know which sister she's talking about. And so I've taken that on almost like a responsibility. And since she has passed now 2 years, we've made a lot of progress in bringing her back into the fold. And so even though she's gone, I'm now thinking of what would my mother want me to do would she want me to keep grieving, or would she want me to move forward with my life and do something positive? And so I do remember her, but now in a real positive way. Yes, there are some songs that will play that will cause the dam to break from time to time. But it's still progressing, getting to live without her, but yet focusing on those memories. The memories are really strong, and that helps me.
Exactly, that's a great point. You're identifying with, what your mom would want you to, exactly. Wonderful.
Is there another question?
Dr. Sally, if someone were to ask me, Esther, how do I get some Department of Mental Health services? What should I tell them? And another thing while I'm speaking, sometimes people tell me they go to the doctor's office and there's a questionnaire and they can't be bothered with answering that paper. What is that about, and is it important?
Thank you, Esther. And so the Department of Mental Health, it's a very big entity. And so there is the inpatient or the hospital side of it, and there is the community side of it. So the hospital side of it, we have a bunch of hospitals. Worcester Recovery Center, Solomon Carter Fuller, Taunton State Hospital, Tewksbury Hospital, and Shattuck Hospital. So those are for serious mental illnesses. The community side, you just need some case management, right? Let's say you're looking for help with your insurance, like you have a mental illness, but you need some help with, just getting around, appointments, et cetera, et cetera. You have a serious mental illness, we have 5 different areas. And Kathy Wenzel is here. She worked in the community for eternity. So she can answer those questions, way better than I can. But 5 different areas. Metro Boston, that largely covers Boston and, Northeast, Southeast, Central Mass, that covers Worcester. I think Northboro would be Central Mass, probably. And then we have Western Mass. All you do is look up Department of Mental Health and you have to contact one of the area offices. That's the beginning of how you receive services. And the department is actively trying to reach out to people, the churches and faith communities. Given what you described, that people of faith, sometimes they just think I'm going to pray and I don't have to seek help. So the department is making a concerted effort to reach out to people in the faith communities, because that's an area that we're historically unable to reach. There are all kinds of reasons. There is the faith side of it. There is also a general lack of trust in government structures, authority structures, and those also have some valid and not valid reasons. Historically, people of color, have had bad experiences with government structures, so there is that. But with the Department of Mental Health, you have to begin with one of the areas. So you go to the Department of Mental Health, you can look at central office directory, you can look at your different areas. There's a beautiful map you can see, and if the Central Mass is your area, you call. Right, Kathy? Or
Helpline is an amazing place to start, and sometimes somebody might be scared to do that or scared to try it, and I would sit with them and I would support them and hear it together if they wanted that. But when someone is struggling or you're worried, it's a good place to start, to reach out to them and try to find out what's available and just be there. Be there for them, help them make that step, sit with them. The behavioral health hotline can connect you with so many different services that can make such a huge difference. I don't know if you heard all of that.
and if I may, thank you, Kathy. You have such experience with the community side of it. And one thing I want to mention to you, historically, if you needed to go to a hospital seeking help, you needed to go through the emergency department. Now you don't have to. You do not have to go to the emergency department. Let's say I get depressed, right? And I just want to go get admitted for like 2-3 days. You do not have to go through the emergency room and get an ED clearance. We used to call emergency department clearance. You can call any of the, what we call community behavioral health center. They can guide you. Or you can just show up to a hospital and they'll have to admit you. So you can do a direct admit now. So historically, a lot of people would not go seeking help. If you're feeling very depressed, who wants to deal with the emergency room? I was there once with a loved one, 36 hours. I hated every single second of it.
Yes.
Yeah. And so now if you want to get directly admitted to a mental health hospital, you can directly show up and they'll have to admit you. That's a Massachusetts, law. There is a guideline to it.
All right, there's a hand over here.
I have a simple question. Mental illness. So a lot of us, everybody has had different kinds of mental issues. But on the positive side, what is the percentages of getting through it, whether it's depression or whether it's grief or whether it's postpartum depression? What are the statistics of getting through it and then you're finished with it, you're on the other side? Is it like, you have the flu, you might have it for a year or two, but what are the percentages of then it's going to be over?
So thank you for that question. So the department and we, we believe in recovery, right? Everybody recovers. That's what we believe in. And we go to extreme length. So on the department side, if I have to work with someone for 10 years or 5 years or 15 years, we don't give up. Hope is one of our, department's motto, goal. We maintain hope that people are going to recover. Now, you're looking at some serious mental illnesses and some non-serious mental illnesses. So you're looking at schizophrenia, that's a serious mental illness. You're looking at severe depression, that is a serious mental illness. You're looking at post-traumatic stress disorder, that is a serious mental illness. And bipolar disorder, that's a serious mental illness. Now it's possible to recover from all of these and have, a community life. It may not be of the same, level. So let's say, if I have diabetes, and if I have insulin-dependent diabetes, or if I have a medical issue, I may not be able to maintain the same life, but I can live a productive, healthy life. So of all these 4 illnesses, the most complicated one to recover from is schizophrenia, because it has the highest genetic loading. But people with schizophrenia are people, we admit them, we discharge them, they live in communities. Sometimes they need a lot of help in the community. Sometimes they're able to work. But in general, we believe in recovery. With depression, so first episode depression. So if you never had a depression before, the recovery is almost near universal. Now you may have to try different medications, right? So initially, unfortunately, we don't have labs where I can do a blood work and tell you what to do. So the doctors, they have to try, 1 medication, 2 medication. First episode recovery is nearly universal. Now it helps if you do a few other things with treatment, like you exercise, you eat healthy, maybe you pray, you do all these things. So recovery happens. With post-traumatic stress disorder, you can recover. It can be difficult depending upon the trauma, right? So the percentages depend. Like if you were in war, if you had a personal trauma, so it depends on what trauma, if you were in an accident, if you were in a car, I remember, panicking, so true story, this happened to me. I do long distance cycling, and I don't do it anymore. I lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I saw a bad accident, like a bunch of people rolled over on each other. And I had to do first aid on them. I could not go back to, cycling for the next 3 months. I got so terrified every time I got on the bicycle, and here I am, I'm a fairly strong person, or at least I consider myself to be a strong person. But, I went back to it a little later. So it depends. Some people take different times. It's a person-centered thing. Most, recovery is possible. Recovery is the goal. Depression, more likely to recover. People with bipolar disorder, if people take the medication, you can maintain a very healthy, normal life. I have a good friend of mine, she's a psychiatrist, has a full-fledged bipolar disorder, lives in Colorado, and has a good practice. Beloved doctor. Bad bipolar, really severe bipolar disorder. I knew her in residency, used to get very manic, and so with medication, she has a successful career. So with all these illnesses, recovery is possible. We always maintain the hope. Different people respond differently, but it requires taking your medications, doing things, and staying away from substances.
Yes.
That complicates things. So if there are substances involved, then the rate of recovery goes down.
All right, we can take one more.
I have a question regarding some people say, well, because you did touch those points, if I get good rest, if I eat right, if I exercise, I can maintain and I don't need to put chemicals in my body. Can you talk to that?
So thank you for that question. And so some days I think like that too. I eat healthy, and I'm like, okay, if I only ate healthy, and I eat very healthy. But let's go back to the biopsychosocial model, right? If I have this biological predisposition that runs in my family, can't do anything about it. Eating healthy is not going to help it. It just runs in my family. So if depression runs in your family, you're likely to get depressed, no matter how healthy you eat, right? Then we also say there are stresses in life, right? So let's say, God forbid I lose my job today. That can predispose me to depression. No matter, I may not have the energy to eat healthy. So eating healthy, exercising, maintaining your relationship, all these things, they help. They're not going to take care of the biological side of it. If it's biologically predisposed, and no amount of eating healthy would help. The second side is you may be exposed to such a severe stress, right? You may not have time to eat healthy. The third thing I want to say is, so in postpartum depression, I want to come back to our mothers here. So I had mentioned that the first line of treatment is ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. You know why we do that? Because we don't want to lose time in bonding with the child for the mother. So we can treat the depression just by, either some medication. There is a thing called natural course of illness. So let's say if I get depressed, in a year or two, I'm going to get better. That's the natural course of illness. But in a year or two, I could have lost my job, my relationship, my family, et cetera, et cetera. So this chemical thing, and think of all the chemicals we put in ourselves all day. So just by eating healthy, I don't think we can treat a mental illness. It does help, eating healthy, exercising, but if you have a true mental illness, you need some medication. Or you need some professional help. Like I have said to patients that you don't need medications, let's wait. I've said many times, let's try it. There is this thing called conservative approach. I want to wait and see how you do. So sometimes you may not need medication, but if you're the one deciding it, not a good idea. Like I don't make decisions about my car, I bring it to my mechanic. Maybe someday I'll become a mechanic.
So folks, we want to thank Dr. Saleh for coming here and sharing this with us. Give him a round of applause, please.
Happy Mother's Day, everyone. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Appreciate it.
Saleh?
I have the distinguished pleasure this afternoon to say thanks to you in a tangible way. I think your time here was well spent. I think we are better learned in the area, and your instructions are very nice, good for us. We will take what you said to us today, and we're going to try, by the grace of God, to practice. Thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving towards the end. I was asked to give a closing thought, which I'll do now. And since it's Mother's Day celebration, I'm going to tell you a story that my mother told me years ago. And it was a boy who was a truant. Guys who cut school and, they leave home to go to school and end up not going to school. In my country, we call it skulking. I was a good skulker, actually. I was a professional skulker. You know who's a professional skulker? One who gives himself work, corrects it, and carried home to his mother. Well, she told me the story of this boy, and as I'm thinking about it now, maybe she was giving me a message. But this boy, he was a truant. He ran away from home, and spent a lot of days away from home, but then wanted to return home. And of course, he was very embarrassed. He wasn't too confident that his mom is going to let him back in because, of course, he left. And so he wrote her a letter. He said, "Mom, I am passing every day in the train and I'm looking in to where I used to live. Tomorrow I'm going to pass again. And if you want me to come back home, just put one shirt on the line. And then I will know that I can come back home." But of course, Linda, he's on the train and he's looking now. And he saw a line full of shirts. A line full of shirts. Isn't that God's love to us? So he knew that she would receive him with open arms. Not one shirt, a line full of shirts. And we have mothers today who will put up a line full of shirts for their children and for others' children. We want to salute our mothers today. We want to thank them all for what they have done for us in the church. And one of the things I noticed this morning from the congratulations from the children is that not only did they focus on their mother, but the mothers of the church, as to how influential these mothers are in their lives. So thank you so much for that. So we're going to go for a close right now. We want to ask Elder Davis, Elder Francis, yeah. Go ahead, Marcel.
I just want to thank on behalf of the women of the hospitality team, I just want to thank our men. I want to thank them very, very much. I know it says that encouragement sweeten labor, but it's really from the heart. They came out big time. We have the leader, Dave, and Giovanni, and on my hospitality team, we have Delroy. But I'm saying all the men stepped up. And I was down there a little while at the end just to put things back in in my eyes place. I wasn't trying to do anything down there. And they wouldn't let me anyhow. But I'm saying thank you guys very much. And I enjoy church from the beginning when I'm here to the end. So thank you guys.
Until next Mother's Day.
What we did today and during the week is just a small retribution to what men should do to honor and acknowledge the contribution of not only mothers, but women in general, at home, in our society as well. So you're very welcome. And I will have to say that the real hero is not here anymore, but that is my man, Delroy. I call him the master chef. That guy is for real. So it's really good to hear that you all had a good time. And I trust that tomorrow and the day after, and the day after, and the day after that, you will continue to be at the center of everything that happens in this world until Father's Day. That day is ours. Come on, you have to give us a little bit of love too. Can't be that selfish. Let us pray. We give you thanks, O Lord, for allowing us to be part of this family. Because as in any other family, there is trouble, there is sadness, concerns, challenges. But what there is more of, that is love. And there is a lot of love in this church. Thank you, O Lord, for always being with us. The good, the bad, middle of everything that happens in this church. You're always here. Thank you, because you gave us the opportunity to hear a powerful message today, since the morning, now in the afternoon. And we pray that the messages that we heard, we will carry them with us. And there is going to be a transformation in how we operate. We ask for your presence as we go in different directions now. Bless every one of our families. Allow us to enjoy the rest of the weekend, and that the week to come will be a blessing unto us as well. Until we come together again, we ask for your companion and protection. It's our prayer. In Jesus' name.
So thank you everybody for staying for AY. I have a small token for each of the women that are here this afternoon. Children, if you're here, you can come and help me and bring them to the ladies and to the mothers here. So children, come on and get something from this box and bring it either to your mom or another mom in church, please. Come on, I see you all. Come on. All right, again, thank you, everyone, and may God continue to bless all of us. Happy Mother's Day.